Gotta get glasses. I'm gonna check our blood pressure first before we get all into everything else. Blood pressure check. Check this good old blood pressure. Make sure we in line. Not bad. Blood pressure check's not that bad. We're gonna check this other arm down. Check the blood pressure. We can take that 120 over 88. 120 over 88 today for blood pressure. Blood pressure check. We got to do that before we drink all this hot caffeine. Before we drink the caffeine. 120 over 88, max. Ugh. 120 over 88. That's good for me because I'm used to being ha, 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 ha. Let's work that down. 120 over 88. Still high, but it's not high. What's it at? 518. 518. Blood pressure check. We did that. Now we gotta read the word. Word. God is the word. May 18th, we're reading Acts 25, Ruth 1 and 2, and Psalms 47. Acts 25. Good morning. Three days after Festus arrived in Caesarea to take over his new responsibilities, he left for Jerusalem, where the leading priests and other Jewish leaders met with him and made their accusations against Paul. They asked Festus as a favor to transfer Paul to Jerusalem. Their plan was to waylay and kill him. But Festus replied that Paul was at Caesarea and he himself would be returning there too. So he said, those of you in authority can return with me. If Paul has done anything wrong, you can make your accusations. 8 or 10 days later, he returned to Caesarea, and on the following day, Paul's trial began. On Paul's arrival in court, the Jewish leaders from Jerusalem gathered around and made many serious accusations they couldn't prove. Paul denied the charges. I am not guilty, he said. I have committed no crime against the Jewish law or the temple of the Roman government. Then Festus, wanting to please the Jews, asked him, are you willing to go to Jerusalem and stand trial before me there? But Paul replied, no. This is the official Roman court, so I ought to be tried right here. Hey, Max, come here. Leave that lady alone. Hey, come here. Come here. Now, Thank you. Good dog. Come here. You know very well I am not guilty. Stop. If I have done something worthy of death, I don't refuse to die. But if I am innocent, neither you nor anyone else has the right to turn me over to these men. I appeal to Caesar. Festus conferred with his advisor and then replied, Very well, you have appealed to Caesar, and to Caesar you shall go. A few days later, King Agrippa arrived with his sister Bernice to pay their respects to Festus. During their stay of several days, Festus discussed Paul's case with the king. There's a prisoner here, he told him, whose case was left for me by Felix. When I was in Jerusalem, the leading priests and other Jewish leaders pressed charges against him and asked me to sentence him. Of course, I quickly pointed out to them that Roman law does not convict people without trial. They are given the opportunity to defend themselves face to face with their accusers. When they came here for trial, I called the case the very next day and ordered Paul brought in. But the accusations made against him weren't at all what I expected. It was something about their religion and about someone called Jesus who died, but whom Paul insists is alive. I was perplexed as how to conduct an investigation of this kind. I asked him whether he would be willing to stand trial on these charges in Jerusalem. But Paul appeared to the emperor, so I ordered him back to jail until I could arrange to send him to Caesar. I'd like to hear the man myself, Agrippa said, and Festus replied, You shall tomorrow. Paul speaks to Agrippa. So the next day, Agrippa and Bernice arrived at the auditorium with great pomp accompanied by military officers and prominent men of the city. Festus ordered that Paul be brought in. Then Festus said, King Agrippa and all the present, this is the man whose death is demanded by both the local Jews and those in Jerusalem. But in my opinion, he has done nothing worthy of death. However, he appealed his case to the emperor, and I decided to send him. But what shall I write the emperor? For there is no real charge against him. So I brought him here before you all, and especially you, King Agrippa, so that after we examine him, I might have something to write. For it doesn't seem reasonable to send a prisoner to the emperor without specifying the charges against him. Acts 25, Ruth 1 and 2. Elimelech moves his family to Moab. Ruth 1. In the days when the judges ruled in Israel, a man from Bethlehem in Judah left the country because of severe famine. He took his wife and 2 sons and went to live in the country of Moab. The man's name was Elimelech, and his wife was Naomi. The 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion. They were Euphrates from Bethlehem in the land of Judah. During their stay in Moab, Elimelech and Naomi was left. Elimelech died, and Naomi was left with her 2 sons. The 2 sons married Moab. The 2 sons married Moabite women. One married a woman named Oprah, and the other married a woman named Ruth. But about 10 years later, both Mahlon and Chilion died. This left Naomi alone without her sons. Naomi and Ruth returned. Then Naomi heard in Moab that the Lord had blessed his people in Judah by giving them some good crops again. So Naomi and her daughter-in-laws got ready to leave Moab to return to her homeland. With her 2 daughter-in-laws, she set out for the place where she had been living, and they took the road that would lead them back to Judah. But on the way, Naomi said to her 2 daughter-in-laws, Go back to your mother's home instead of coming with me. And may the Lord reward you for your kindness to your husbands and to me. May the Lord bless you with security of another marriage. Then she kissed them goodbye, and they all broke down and wept. No, they said, we want to go with you to your people. But Naomi replied, why should you go on with me? Can I still give birth to other sons who could grow up and be your husbands? No, my daughters, return to your parents' homes, for I am too old to marry again. And even if it were possible, and I were to get married tonight and bear sons, then what? Would you wait for them to grow up and refuse to marry someone else? No, of course not, my daughters. Things are far more bitter for me than for you, because the Lord himself has caused me to suffer. And again they wept together. Oprah kissed her mother-in-law and said goodbye. But Ruth insisted on staying with Naomi. See, Naomi said to her, your sister-in-law has gone back to her people and to her gods. You should do the same. But Ruth replied, don't ask me to leave you and turn back. I will go wherever you go and live wherever you live. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. I will die where you die and will be buried there. May the Lord punish me severely if I allow anything but death to separate us. So when Naomi saw that Ruth had made up her mind to go with her, she stopped urging her. So the two of them continued on their journey. When they came to Bethlehem, the entire town was stirred by their arrival. Is it really Naomi? The women asked. Don't call me Naomi, she told them. Instead, call me Mara. For the Almighty has made life very bitter for me. I went away full, but the Lord has brought me home empty. Why should you call me Naomi when the Lord has caused me to suffer, and the Almighty has sent such tragedy? So Naomi returned to Moab, accompanied by her daughter-in-law Ruth, the young Moabite woman. They arrived in Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley festival harvest. Ruth works in Boaz's fields. Chapter 2. Now there was a wealthy and influential man in Bethlehem named Boaz, who was a relative of Naomi's husband, Elimelech. One day Ruth said to Naomi, let's go out into the fields and gather leftover grain behind anyone who would let me do it. And Naomi said, all right, my daughter, go ahead. So Ruth went out to gather grain behind the harvesters, and as it happened, she found herself working in the field that belonged to Boaz, the relative of her father-in-law, Elimelech. While she was there, Boaz arrived from Bethlehem and greeted the harvesters. The Lord be with you, he said. The Lord bless you, and the harvesters replied. Then Boaz asked his foreman, who is that girl over there? And the foreman replied, she is a young woman from Moab who came back with Naomi. She asked me this morning if she could gather grain behind the harvesters. She has been hard at work ever since, except for a few minutes of rest over there in the shelter. Boaz went over and said to Ruth, listen, my daughter, stay right here with us. When you gather grain, don't go to any other field. Stay right behind the women working in my field. See which part of the field they are harvesting and follow them. I have warned the young men not to bother you. And when you are thirsty, help yourself to the water they have drawn from the well. Ruth fell at his feet and thanked him warmly. Why are you so kind to me, she asked. I am only a foreigner. Yes, I know, Boaz replied. But I also know about the love and kindness you have shown your mother-in-law since the death of your husband. I've heard how you left your father and mother in your own land to live here among complete strangers. May the Lord, the God of Israel, under whose wings you have come to take refuge, reward you fully. I hope I continue to please you, sir, she replied. You have confronted me by speaking so kindly to me, even though I am not worthy as your workers. At lunchtime, Boaz called to her, "Come over here and help yourself to some of our food. You can dip your bread in the wine if you like." So she sat with the harvesters, and Boaz gave her food, more than she could eat. When Ruth went back to work again, Boaz ordered his young men, "Let's gather grain right among the sheaves without stopping her. Let her gather right among the sheaves without stopping her." And pulled out some heads of barley from the bundles and dropped them on purpose for her. Let her pick them up and don't give her a hard time. So Ruth gathered barley there all day, and when she beat out the grain that evening, it came about to a half a bushel. She carried it back to town and showed it to her mother-in-law. Ruth also gave her the food that was left over from her lunch. "So much?" Naomi exclaimed. "Where did you gather all this grain today? Where did you work? May the Lord bless the one who helped you." So Ruth told her mother-in-law about the man in whose field she had worked. And she said, "The man I work for today's name is Boaz." "May the Lord bless him," Naomi told her daughter-in-law. "He is showing kindness to us as well as doing a deal to your husband. That man is one of our closest relatives, one of our family's redeemers." Then Ruth said, "What's more, Boaz even told me to come back and stay with his harvesters until the entire harvest is complete." "This is wonderful," Naomi exclaimed. "Do as he says. Stay with his harvesters. Work right through the whole harvest. You will be safe there, unlike in other fields." So Ruth worked alongside the women in Boaz's field and gathered grain with them until the end of the barley harvest. Then she worked with them throughout the wheat harvest too. But all the while she lived with her mother-in-law. Ruth 1 and 2. And Psalms 47. Psalms 47. You having fun there, dog? Are you having fun? Good job. "Come, everyone, and clap your hands for joy. Shout to God with joyful praise. For the Lord Most High is awesome. He is the great King of all the earth. He subdues the nations before us, putting our enemies beneath our feet. He chose the promised land as our inheritance, the proud possession of Jacob's descendants, whom he loves. God has ascended with a mighty shout. The Lord has ascended with trumpets blaring. Sing praise to God. Sing praises. Sing praises to our King. Sing praises. For God is the King over all the earth. Praise him with a song. God reigns above all. God reigns above the nations, sitting on his holy throne. The rulers of the world have gathered together. They join us in praising the God of Abraham. For all the kings of the earth belong to God. He is highly honored everywhere. Psalms 47. Amen. Stay blessed. I do.